Dr. Rachel Glick is a licensed professional counselor and author. Her newest book is A Soulful Marriage. Welcome back to the show, Rachel.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Refresh our memory, even though it hasn't been that long. Tell us a little about your personal lives, more about your work, and why you do what you do.
I have always been a soul searcher and I've been married for 36 years. And I love helping people actualize and find happiness, relieve pain, but also find their potential and fulfillment. So I love family and I love combining all of those together to use my own life experience and my own inner work as leverage for then reaching out into the world and helping people. It fulfills me very deeply. So I appreciate being here.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to our conversation today. We were just talking. I was on your website, and had been writing about strengthening, fixing relationships with parents.
Mhm.
And I know that the parenting relationship is always, well, I don't know if it's always challenging or not. I feel like it's certainly challenging for me with sometimes with my parents, and I'm a
Yep.
dad, so relationship with my kids. But how is I don't know what the jumping point off is. So let's just jump together. What
Sure.
what is on your mind there?
Great. Well, I guess I first want to acknowledge that it is part of a movement, and you're not alone if you're facing that. It's the experience of having tension with your parents or with your adult children or your younger children. But mostly I'm thinking about once adults, the estrangements there. That seems to be a focus of another really strong area in my practice. But the first thing that I think is important is to normalize it and to embrace and accept what's happening if that's part of what's happening in your life. And I mean, I'm happy to unpack more all the nuances. There's no one single estrangement story. There's typically no one right or one wrong, but I always like to use it for the sake of expanding the capacity for love, acceptance, and personal and spiritual growth. But it's extremely painful process when you're having friction or even cutoffs from that parent-child bond.
How common, well, you said we need to normalize it, talk about
Yeah,
it, because I don't know too many people that would say, "Oh, my relationship with my folks or my kids is just perfect all the time," and I've
I
never felt
know.
ashamed or guilty or mad at them. I think that's just part of human dynamics, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Um, but I imagine that's pretty common.
It's extremely common. Now, having issues is common because we're different and we're here to differentiate and generational shifts. And there's so many reasons why we have challenges with our parents. But I believe, at least from what I learned from studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, and that resonates with me, is that we choose our parents as a soul because it awakens in us or shows us the very kind of purpose we're here to overcome. And often the difficulties are showing us where our growth is. It's a very empowering way to look at it. It doesn't mean it's not painful, but the incidence of estrangements where it goes all the way to that point of cutoffs or intentional distancing or that is certain research recently in Journal of Marriage and Family shows that 26% of fathers are estranged from a child or children and 6% of mothers. And fathers tend to have a longer stretch of time they're estranged. Mothers reconcile more quickly in terms of years or months. And but I find that the mothers, it's very difficult for fathers too, but it takes a stronger emotional toll on mothers.
That's really interesting, and I don't know that I'm surprised by it necessarily, that
Right.
26% of fathers are estranged from their kids, while only 6% of mothers are. Um, do we attribute that to a stronger initial bond or a woman's desire slash ability to mend fences?
I think those are all factors. Divorce is a big factor for the men and the estrangement and the wedges that form, or the resentment about the divorce, or the way the mother handles that. And communication skills are so essential. And many, believe me, who I meet with, the mothers aren't faring great with their communication skills. Once they reach the point of estrangement, likely is a lack of really learning how to listen and hear. And we tend to go right after fairness and wanting to defend ourselves. And that just doesn't work. I mean, we need to hold space for our children when they share their grievances. And I'm not saying all adult children are right in this situation, how they're handling it, but I do know the paved road for reconciliation is good communication skills. And a lot of us don't have that, but especially men have a little harder time with being in the emotional world, of staying there longer. And the bond, like you said, like there's just also a different level of a bond for a mother at a soul level and a physical level, the physical.
Fairness. I
Hmm.
can definitely see that as I'm going to stand on this. It's a principle.
Hmm.
And you think that and I'll put myself in in the shoes of the dad who's estranged from his adult children. Like I didn't do anything wrong. Your mother and I split up. We divorced, and I did everything that I should have or could have to keep this relationship going. So I'm not going to take all the blame. Is
Yeah.
that my over the target?
Yeah. And it can be that and many other scenarios where, I sacrifice so much. Okay. I'm not perfect. So why are you holding this over me? Why do you keep bringing it up? But like the adult children that I meet with, they are really looking for a full, wholehearted apology and being really heard. And we think that it's either or, that if I really hear someone and apologize or really, for whatever, even if it was unintentional, that I didn't meet the need that you had in the way that I parented you in that way, then we think that that means that nullifies the value we have and all the positive contributions we've made as a parent. And it's not the case. It's really about continuing to hold space for the child because we're still came first. We're still the cause. And it's a mature, it's not an easy thing to get to. I've had, my own relationship with my adult children. I've had to have many difficult conversations over different things, but in particular, I'm so glad that they opened up to me about things that I said or did when they were growing up. And thankfully, I had the exposure to how important it is to hold space for them, that I saw it as a way to continue being their mother, that I needed to validate their feelings. And then once they felt heard and understood and they could feel safe and trust that I wasn't going to just debate them or rebut them, then even in that same conversation, there was room for me to also share my perspective. But the biggest parent mistake parents make is they rush to defend themselves, which is human nature. We do that in marriage. That's what I have chapters about that, in the Soulful Marriage. And really the same four pillars applies. People are telling me that as they're reading the book, like this really could work with my relation with my kids or with my siblings, or so back to the defensiveness. It's just we don't trust that if we that it we're not that we're not safe unless we get our point across all the time. But no, let's just take our time and let's hear them out and let flush it out like with our kids. So how did that make you feel when I did that? Doesn't mean you're agreeing with them, by the way. You might still think, I know I did what I feel was right what I did, and I would do it again. You might think that in your mind, but like in that moment, that is, and maybe when they begin and like stretch it out, like now my daughter is a mother herself. And so some of these things that and married and so I already see her coming to realize certain things that she can, I think, already understand some of it much more. So that's also we need patience to trust the process.
From the perspective of the child,
Mhm.
and maybe they feel like, you know, the dad just wasn't there for me. He didn't do whatever it took to mend the relationship or to be there. There's certainly a an emotional weight and negative that maybe you don't realize that it's a burden you're carrying around
Mhm.
beyond just my dad's not in my life anymore and my kids aren't going to be around their grandkids. Do you understand what I'm kind of trying to say? There's more
So,
negatives than maybe people realize.
yes, yes. Yeah, on the surface, and I don't use that word to mean not important. many of the reasons that are justified for not doing anything more to try to connect with your father, let's say, in that situation. It does take a toll on us as individuals to have a crack in that bond, and it's less about creating the dreamy image you hoped for. It's more about doing everything you can to heal where you have resentment, to heal where you feel like it was unfair, to heal where you don't feel appreciative of the father you've been given, to trust that this is the father I've been given and to not question that. This is all often in your own inner world that, you gave me life. We belong together, whether we're in touch or we're not. This comes from family constellation therapy, by the way, some of what I'm saying right now, and blended with Kabbalah, that really connecting to a deeper sense of your what you can attribute in your life that's based on this connection you have. And so everything you can do to, if you need to be the initiator, a lot of people feel resentful that, well, he never made effort, so why should I? And likely he's not equipped, or he has his own mental health or substance abuse issue. I don't know, or unworthiness, whatever. Wasn't raised that way. That doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. So what I find is that there's an internal work that the adult child needs to do to heal that inner child. And that's our job. And then the wise adult in us or core self, can then get involved to say what's really going to be best for the bigger picture. Like, I will take care of you, my inner child. And I will, as the wise adult, see how I can bring as much respect and connectedness to this person who brought me in, was part of bringing me into this world as I can. And see how it might be an opportunity to heal something deep in one's soul. Or so that's a little bit of how you can approach that. Do you have any other follow-up questions for me to get more specific about that?
Yeah, well, I think that certainly does make sense. I I imagine that the gulf that we feel is between, and this is true of any relationship, if it's friendships, but we'll just obviously stay with this, talking about a child and their parent, that the space in between us, we probably perceive to be far greater than it actually is. And both parties are probably very amenable to reconciliation if only we would recognize that and first accept the responsibility that we have for this. And that could come in the form of, maybe there's things that I did that caused this, but
Mhm.
there's things I can be doing from a humility standpoint, or just saying, okay, it seems like we're not getting anywhere. Maybe it is incumbent on me to do the work within me to heal my inner child, and that will then allow me to initiate bridging this divide.
Mhm.
That was
Absolutely.
word salad I just threw at you,
No,
Rachel.
no, it made sense to me. Yeah. And that when you say the gulf, sometimes is we perceive it as larger. It's kind of like how the tongue perceives something of a cut or whatever is so big in the mouth when it's actually smaller. But I don't want to minimize the emotional pain of this. And but at the same time, the reason that I'm passionate about this particular population of people who struggle is because of how vulnerable and tender that is to me, because mothering is, and my relationship with my children is just so incredibly important to me. But also because with some small shifts, some harmony is right there. And a lot of that is this needing to be heard. And if and I'm not saying that adult children aren't, getting caught up in what can be called therapeutic culture, where some therapists will have them focus on their emotional pain and less on taking responsibility. And that is a shame, but that's just, that can happen. But most importantly is that um, that the parent can do so much to offer a warmth and trusting environment because the adult child wants to feel safe and wants to trust them, and they pull away because they're trying to sort themselves out and need space to do that sometimes, get stronger. And also, they just don't feel safe or don't trust that if I come back into the relationship, I'm going to get the same hurtful responses. And I don't know if I can handle that. So, as the adult child gets stronger, then they also can be a force of, because sometimes the emotional and spiritual maturity, even though the parents are always first in terms of what came first, sometimes the soul is more mature of the child and their readiness to do the work inside um, is more on their side of the situation. So they can then be the one to give mercy and to see past the behaviors that their parent is doing in a way that they can set good boundaries, of course, and make sure, in practicality, that the environment is as healthy as possible, or that you spend a little, maybe less frequent time, or whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, but that you can then hold space on some level to accept your parent for what they're capable of and honor what they have given you and who they are and the soul contract on some level that you form together in this lifetime.
A lot of really powerful stuff right there. Honor what they've given you, which is life and existence.
I
So
mean,
I
we can never pay
guess
that
that's
back.
good.
And not, it's enough. The rest is extra credit.
Yeah. Thanks.
Really.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Focusing on pain over responsibility. I wrote down the mistake of focusing on pain over responsibility. And sure, if I only
Mhm.
focus on the hurt that I have versus, yeah, that's bad. And it's a shame that that happened. And I'm sorry that it didn't. And I wish that it never had.
Mhm.
And takes two to tango kind of a
Right.
thing. So what responsibility do you have in this? And if we're able to build ourselves up as individuals, as autonomous human beings that are strong and confident and self-assured, well, then I could probably overlook the pain that I experienced when I was a child or whatever
Hmm.
trespasses were made against me.
Hmm.
Um,
And something taking it to the whole next level, which is takes healing, this true force of healing. That I'll have one other thing that I can add about that too, but is seeing it as um, yes, you can see it as that they were unfortunate and they shouldn't have happened. At the other hand, when we zoom out and trust that we're in a friendly universe, that things are happening for us, not to us, then you have the invitation to look at it as in a trusting way, in a this is a stretch to say, but almost in a way of being of benefit to us as a soul. The ego maybe went through a hard time, the body went through a hard time, but maybe there's something to balance out that the soul needs to go through that, or to awaken what your purpose is, or to help you see what negative belief system you came in the world with. If this is sometimes we have to have like with penicillin, you have to have a dose of the disease to get the cure. You need something to highlight and bring attention to, something that you really, some deep inner work that you came to do. And so then you can see people like we're the main actor in our movie. This was how it was taught to me in my Kabbalah classes early on. We're the main actor in our movie and the main character, and all these other people are just side players or whatever they call that. And the universe is the director, or God, or our journey, however you want, our higher self is the director. So that can really help us feel it's like an anti-victim perception of what we go through. Again, you still are in a body and have to deal with the pain and take care of your inner child. It doesn't negate that. You still have to, and there's ways to do that. And that's one of the most magical things that I get to do in therapy is help people reparent themselves. And ultimately that perspective, it really, you can feel yourself feel more expansive and less heavy. And that makes more room for reconciliation because you're not putting all the responsibility on the parent for how they treated you. It's like, oh, part of me chose this. And that can be really harsh to say. And we have to be sensitive about that for really extreme, horrific scenarios. So that's it's always got to be handled very delicately. But so that's one of the things that I wanted to say about really making yourself a force of healing.
I love everything about that. The idea that we're in a friendly universe. Is it fair to say that everything that happens is designed to benefit us, even though it's painful and sometimes awful?
Yes. Mhm. It's not just like, oh, this is and this isn't. It's like if you believe that, then how could it be where we decide what fits that and what doesn't fit that? But we just can't see how it makes sense.
Do you have a sense of, is that a common way for people to think from your experience, or is that something that the light bulb has to switch on?
I find that to be a most uncommon way of looking at it. In mainstream, if you looked at the total population, and I attract people who have perhaps some interest in spirituality because of you might feel it on my website, or you'd certainly read about it in my book and articles I write and things I say. But most people are just looking for help, and they're just something they just need someone who they think knows what they're doing. And then they find that as they seem ready, I'll plant seeds like that. But then there are some where it just has a deep resonance since they were born. And yeah.
You mentioned that we have a potential negative framework that we came into the negative belief system that we came into the world with. I've
Mm.
never I've never thought of it like that. I always thought about all the dumb thinking I have. It's because of conditioning, but it could be that it was just part of my DNA.
I would say it's a both and. It's kind of like how we say in psychology, the nature and the nurture. It's both in our nature and it's also reinforced in the nurture. And so it's similar that if you have more than one kids, is that right? Yeah, I thought so. You can kind of see that you see the differences in what seems like a similar environment,
Hmm,
or
good point.
just people that you know, or your siblings, how different you can be from your siblings. When, of course, there's a little difference each time you're born. Your parents are different and things are different, but nonetheless, there's such individual differences. And so we know that about personality, DNA. And then you just take it a little deeper. And then it's also, we come in with a soul. We come in with something that is unique to us that may have existed before we were born. That is, that lends itself to a belief, to the belief system that the soul is eternal and is connected to something endless and extension of something endless, and that it has a journey, that it is working through something to restore balance, to heal, to express its gifts. It's what it's here to come to create wholeness. So then that also can open up the viewpoint of that I came in with, like for me it's people pleasing, or that I'm not enough, or I'm going to be invisible, and I chose to be the youngest of older brothers who didn't even admitted did not even remembering I existed till I was in college. So if I'm going to work on feeling like my value comes from within, and that to love myself from within, and to appreciate who I am on the inside, I'm going to need an environment that's going to really make that challenging for me. It's kind of like, it sounds cruel, but it's really more, and believe me, I still have a lot, I still work on healing that inner child as a result of feeling invisible, marginalized, not treated nicely for a long period of time. But I when I see it from the perspective of I needed to work on this from the believing in myself and not being dependent on someone outside of me to find that and to help other people who struggle with that, then this was the perfect siblings and the perfect parents who did their best but didn't really know how to handle that in the home.
Perfect is an interesting term, isn't it? Because it's not without flaw or correct everywhere. It's perfect for you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much for coming back on.
My
Where can
pleasure.
people learn more about you? How can they engage with you? And where can they get their copy of your newest book, A Soulful Marriage?
Yes, they can find the book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and on my website, which is drrachelglick.com. I have like five or so options for buying the book. and that's DrRachelGlik. I also have an Instagram that I'm working to become more involved in. So, but there are things on there, but I'm working to prepare myself to do that, to get even more. And yeah, and anyone can feel free to reach out. This estrangement in particular is hits a very deep chord.
Yeah, indeed.
Mm.
Well, if you enjoyed as much as I did, show Rachel your appreciation. Share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Go to drrachelglick.com, drrachelglik.com, and then pick up your copy of A Soulful Marriage wherever you buy your books. Thanks again, Rachel.
Thank you so much, George.
Until next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.